Okay, thank you. As mentioned by our Sergeant at Arms, your mics will be muted. So our tech chair will be handling that, except for Dennis and myself here. And please feel free to send me your questions via chat. Okay. And then I will have them answered at the appropriate time. We'll make sure to make Dennis aware of that, of the questions. And now Toastmasters is an organization of leaders who are not shy about expressing their ideas. Conflict is bound to arise in a healthy, vibrant club. The way you resolve conflict will help your club continue on its healthy, vibrant path. Dennis Dawson, distinguished Toastmaster, will talk about the kinds of conflict that can arise in a Toastmasters club and strategies for not only resolving the issue, but also using it as a growth opportunity for your club. Dennis Dawson is a writer and educator from Silicon Valley. As past District 57 governor, he encountered and resolved conflicts in many contexts at all levels of the organization. When handled well, a conflict is an opportunity for all parties to learn and grow. Isn't that why we're in Toastmasters, right? He enjoys sharing what he's learned and continues to learn from those who attend his workshops. Fellow Toastmasters, please welcome Dennis Dawson, who will be talking about conflict resolution tactics. And this session is for 1 hour. Dennis, the floor is now yours.
Yay. That's good. I have someplace to dance then. Howdy, everybody. If you have the ability to turn your camera on, I really prefer to see your faces as I'm talking. That way, when I bore you, I'll know it and I can move along. So yeah, please do feel free to turn your camera on. And at times, Derek, I will be asking people to speak, and so we'll be able to unmute their mics at that time. Is that right?
Yes.
See, you did it right there. Excellent. Okay. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Thanks so much. I'm so happy to see so many people in here, although I realize that what brings you here is trauma. You have, in fact, encountered some sort of conflict in your life, whether it be in Toastmasters, at home, what have you. You might wonder, why do we actually spend so much time with conflict resolution workshops in Toastmasters? You know, there is a special module for training the area directors and division directors on conflict resolution. You see, we provide a supportive and positive learning experience in which members are empowered to develop communication and leadership skills, resulting in greater self-confidence and personal growth. But that doesn't mean we always agree and that every day is sunny. It means we continually work to develop these skills. So conflict resolution is one of the most important skills you're going to learn in Toastmasters. So before I get going, does anybody have any particular issues you're hoping to learn about in this presentation? And you can type it into the chat if you'd like, some particular area you're interested in focusing on, and we'll try to address it sometime in the next hour. Many of you have probably encountered a particular conflict in your club, and we're going to have a couple of opportunities to workshop these issues, and hopefully sometime at the end. Think about how you can share your experience without exposing the participants here in Toastmasters. It's a small community. If you say something nasty about somebody, it will get back to them. We want to avoid that. Okay. So at broad swaths, this is what we're going to talk about today. First, we're going to figure out what conflict is in the first place. When does conflict become a problem in your life? We're going to talk about the Ladder of Inference, which if you've never met it before, that'll give us a jumping off place. Talk about how communication is better than conflict. Talk about Stephen Covey's 7 habits, and the most important one, seek first to understand. Something called pack slack, that'll entice you if you've never heard of that. And we will end with crucial conversations, which is the big guns when you've got conflict. to resolve them in an effective way. All right, so what is conflict? There's the definition. Serious disagreement or argument, typically a protracted one. So this is not something where you come in, you have a little tiff, little argument, you resolve it and you walk away. This is usually a conflict that is going to roll on and needs some specific attention in order to resolve it. Now, the first thing you have to know is conflict is healthy. We don't want to be in an organization where everybody thinks and acts exactly the same way. Frankly, the theme of the district last year struck me as a little crazy. We don't speak with one voice. We're not like a bunch of Gregorian monks chanting in unison, walking in single file lines. We're more like one of those Hallelujah chorus sing-along bits where it's a marvelous cacophony of enthusiasm. Some people may not be in tune, but man, they're singing their lungs out. Every now and again, we come together in moments of great harmony, and that's really the goal. Conflict is also inevitable. When you gather 20 people with a variety of life experiences in a room and encourage them to express their authentic selves, there are going to be differences of opinion. Now, this is something to celebrate. If the president of the club makes all the decisions, only one brain is engaged. If all members participate, you've got 20 brains working on solutions, and obviously that's a lot better. Conflict also allows polish and refinement to your ideas. Think of a rock tumbler. You put in rough stones with some polishing powder and you start them rolling. As they collide, the rough edges are knocked off. They come out smooth and shiny. Well, that's kind of the way ideas work. Someone might propose an idea. That's called a thesis. Now, someone else has a different idea, or maybe the opposite idea. You call that an antithesis. When you bounce the thesis and antithesis off of one another, what you can end up with is synthesis, a new idea that neither one of you would have thought of, but by working together to take off the rough edges, you come up with a brand new idea. That's the best possible outcome. Now, it would be great if conflict always worked out on its own to get the best possible result. But sometimes we get stuck in a pattern of conflict and never get to the resolution. If you find the same conflict returns again and again, it can feel like you're on a not so merry-go-round. Often the conflict is the same, but the topic is different. If you don't address and resolve the problem, it's going to continue to rise up and down, just like the horses on a merry-go-round. In some cases, you have conflict, but instead of confronting the problem, the reaction is to direct it towards someone else or a different topic. Usually this comes from addressing a symptom of the conflict to avoid the root of the problem. You might be put off by the way someone talks to you. They're loud and aggressive, but instead of addressing that, you try to pick apart their argument, which might actually be valid. I mean, a stopped clock is right twice a day, right? So it's important to address the actual issue and not get lost in the periphery. Most importantly, if there's conflict but it's allowed to fester, it's not going to magically disappear on its own. You can't hope to outlive every person with whom you have a difference of opinion. So you have to address these at some point, and the sooner you do it, the less stress you're going to have in your life. Now, if you don't address these things, what you end up is silently ruminating on conflicts. And that's where we start to climb what's called the ladder of inference. Now, at my age, I have no business climbing ladders. It's dangerous at the top. The higher I go, the harder I fall, literally and figuratively. On the ladder of inference, we start with objective data in the world, and then we select data from all of the information there is. We make assumptions about the data we see, and those assumptions become part of our belief system. After that, when we select more data, we tend to select data that fits our preconceived notions. After we gather more examples, we might take action based on those beliefs. So how does this work? Now let's start with the reality and facts. All right. So I'm working with a fellow. For each one-on-one, a colleague reschedules 2 to 3 times before we meet. That's a fact. Colleague has 8 other people with whom he meets weekly. Fact. He has a strict policy of working in the office from 9 to 5. That's a fact. He is also asked to meet with 6 other teams on their progress each week. Another fact. Okay, that's some objective information out there in the world, but I'm going to select the ones that I want to talk about. For each one-on-one, he reschedules 2 to 3 times before we meet. He has 8 other people that he meets with weekly. Well, he reschedules our one-on-ones more than he does anyone else. That's our interpretation of the reality when we see things. Based on our interpretation of reality, we might start making assumptions. He wouldn't reschedule important meetings, and important meetings are those that he finds valuable. Based on those assumptions, we can reach a conclusion. He doesn't value our meetings. And I believe that since he doesn't value my contributions, I don't want to work with somebody who doesn't value my contributions. And therefore, my action is, I'm not going to work with this colleague. Now look at how we've climbed that ladder of inference. We start from completely neutral facts that he's got a lot of one-on-ones and he reschedules mine. But then we start churning it in our brain, churning it and churning it and turning it into something it really isn't. Now, you're fine climbing up that ladder of inference, but when you get to the top and you take an action, that's when you jump off. The important thing to remember is you can always examine your beliefs, your conclusions and assumptions before you get to the action step. But once you take action, you can't take it back. If you can climb down the ladder before you jump off, that's how you can avoid many conflicts altogether. So in the immortal words of Strother Martin, what we have here is a failure to communicate. Virtually all conflict comes down to a lack of understanding, where one of the parties feels that they're not being heard. The problem with everybody but me in the world is that they just don't listen. So the best way to resolve an issue is to open up the lines of communication in a calm and safe manner. In our discussions, we might talk about many things. You can discuss facts, but what's the point? Facts are facts. Forget your Kellyanne Conway claptrap. Look up the facts from a reliable source and have them ready before you talk to anybody. We can also discuss opinions. But what's the point in discussing opinions? People are not likely to change their opinions in the course of a conversation. Opinions are linked to our personality, and they tend to be more entrenched when other people start to question them or attack them. So trying to get someone to change their opinion in a long-term project, or is a long-term project, I should say, and not something to attempt in a single meeting. So what have we got left? We have policy. What will we do given the time, the money, and the resources that are available to us? If we have the facts and we set aside our personal opinions, we can find a policy that everyone can live with, even if we don't agree on every aspect of it. A great technique for reaching consensus comes from Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Now, the 5th step of 7 is to seek first to understand and then seek to be understood. When I was working at Oracle Corporation, I had a conflict with one of the systems engineers. He sent an email to the entire department grousing about a number of issues, including an aside that my technical writing team wasn't technical enough. Our boss sent an email saying he should apologize to everyone. And about the writing team, he said, "Oh, I don't mean any disrespect. I love those little muffin heads." Now, regardless of the odd shape of my head, I found that inappropriate. So I invited him to come meet me in an empty office on another floor, neutral ground. I handed him a whiteboard marker and asked him to list all of his grievances with my writing team. I listened to his descriptions and took notes, and then I repeated back what he had said in my own words, letting him correct me where I was off. Frankly, it was a bunch of little things, but they mattered to him. Then I turned the tables. I listed my issues while he took notes. I let him repeat my list in his own words. In that case, just doing that exercise of listening to each other and repeating it back, it completely resolved the issues. Ultimately, we agreed on some ways we could work together more effectively, finding better ways to collaborate than either of us had considered before the talk. The next morning, I brought in muffins for everyone, which gave us a laugh and we were able to blow off some tension. So we worked well together after that with no need for therapy sessions and no need for muffins. Now, sometimes it's good to have a referee in that meeting if it makes everybody more comfortable. But I've typically found that I can work well enough to have that conversation on my own. If you think that it's going to be difficult, definitely bring in a manager, bring in, if it's a conflict you're having at church, you can bring in the pastor to sit there as a neutral party to listen to both sides and be sure that the conversation stays on track. So let's practice this here while we have the time. Let me see somebody raise your hand if you think that it's okay for people to give speeches without having a Pathways project sometimes. Okay, Rebecca, you're going to be my speaker on why it's okay to speak without a Pathways project. Who thinks you should always have a Pathways project every time you get up to speak at a Toastmasters meeting? Priya, very good. All right, so I've got Priya and I've got Rebecca. Now, this is what I'd like for you to do. Rebecca, would you please give 3 reasons you think it's okay not to have a Pathways project for a speech? And Priya, I want you to take notes and repeat them back to her in your own words. All right, go ahead, Rebecca.
All right, and I will start by saying once upon a time, I used to be in Priya's camp. But what I've learned over my many years in Toastmasters is that our club attracts all kinds of people. And now with Pathways, we have some folks in our club with different learning abilities. I'll just say that, technological abilities, and even ability to craft a full speech. We have a few of our members tend to be older with some disabilities who come more for the socialization. And so for those folks who say, I don't want to do Toastmasters, I don't want to be in a box, it allows them to still be part of our club, get the socialization. They love the positivity. And so it opens the doors to people of all kinds. And I will confess that I have also given speeches outside of Pathways, because I have found Pathways to be, especially when you get in the upper levels, a little restrictive. And I just want the CC manual. So I've sort of cheated a little bit, let's just say. Are those 3 reasons? So to open it up to more types of members with different abilities, people with different goals, and then to give ourselves a little bit of flexibility here and there.
Okay, Priya, can you repeat back to Rebecca the ideas that she just shared with us?
Sure. So from what Rebecca said, I think the 3 reasons she cited were, 1, it attracts people of different kinds, coming from different backgrounds, different intentions for why they're joining Toastmasters. Second, it is a socialization platform. It's like meeting a group of people in a setting where they can be fearless, they can be more comfortable, and they can share their opinions. Third, it is less restrictive to give a speech when you're not attached to a pathway.
Yes, I think that was a great summary. Thank you.
All right. Now, Priya, can you give 3 reasons that you feel that everyone should use a Pathways project every time they give a speech?
The 3 reasons that I think people should use Pathways is because, one, you get credit for the speech that you're giving. There is a specific guideline for every speech that you're giving. You have the intention of the speech defined in the pathway. So the different pathways: presentation mastery, persuasive influence, dynamic leadership, leadership development, innovation planning, visionary communication, and so on. And it is that attribute in the speaker actually giving advantage. And secondly, you have the timing element for the speech. If I do not attach a pathway to it, I can go on for 20 minutes and be happy with it, with nobody pointing fingers at me. And the third reason is, when I have a pathway and a title and a prepared speech, I come in more prepared. That's what I think. It's about the preparation. Back to you.
That's great. So over to Rebecca. Can you repeat back to Priya in your own words the points that she made?
Yes, the first one was that it helps the club achieve their goals in terms of the DCP, those sorts of things, the educational, what everything that the team is moving forward with. So helps give people a sense of purpose in terms of community that way. Second would be the pathway itself, providing guidelines and specific goals with timing. And then the third would be that speakers would come in more prepared because they've done the homework of working through the pathway project, the assignment.
Very good. So Rebecca, do you feel that Priya heard what you had to say?
Yes, I did, definitely.
And Priya, how do you feel? Did Rebecca do a good job of summarizing your ideas?
Yes, she did.
Okay, now you haven't changed your opinions, have you?
No.
No, but you have very clearly communicated. And I would ask the entire group, have you ever had a conversation where you heard both sides as clearly as they were able to lay it out right here? No, so it's just a great way to clear the air, get down to what the real issues are. Now, if you want to know why you always have to use a Pathways program, come to my VPA training, and I'll do my best to convince you. But I chose that topic because I knew it would be controversial for Toastmasters in this group. And it's just great to have a good, open discussion of it and move on from there. So I have to ask you, have I not been sharing my screen, or did someone turn my screen sharing? I have not. Holy cow, you just listened to me talking through all of that? Bless your hearts. Very nice. I'm going to share my screen now. There we are. I've had these lovely slides. Okay. So at this point, you've had a chance to express your issues. You might have specific reasons that you agree or disagree, but sometimes you might have a vague sense that something's just not right. And when you're not sure, that's the time you want to pull out PACSLAC. These are the 7 principles of wise decision making. PACSLAC. And by the way, I will share a resource with you so you don't have to take all of these notes as you go through. So the first one, P, is for practical. For whatever idea has been proposed, do you have the time, money, and resources to implement this idea? A is for accurate. Are your numbers correct? If there's any question about the facts, clarify them before you make any decisions at all. C is for consistent. Is what you're proposing consistent with what you've done before, or will you want to do it consistently into the future? Is your idea a real solution, or does it provide a service to the community? This is an important thing. We have lots of great ideas, but they don't necessarily solve the problem that we're actually trying to address. Is your idea legal? L is for legal. Does it follow the rules of an organization like Toastmasters? Does it follow the law in society in general? A is for alternatives. Have you considered all the alternative ideas that might be faster, easier, or less expensive? And finally, C is for consequences. What are the consequences if you move forward with the idea? And what are the consequences if you don't? So these are the 7 words: practical, accurate, consistent, solution or service, legal, alternatives, and consequences. When something comes up and you can't quite put your finger on what's wrong, what you want to do is use this list to enumerate the problems. So let's try a little group thought exercise here. Right now, we have the 2 official contests in the spring, and we have the unofficial contests in the fall at the Fall Fusion. I propose that we have a 5th contest so that we can have one of each type every year. I think we should have another contest here in District 101. So you can answer in chat here. How many people think that would be a practical idea? Do we have the time, money, and resources? I got a couple of no's. I got a yes. No way, Muffin Head. Rebecca, need to explore. Interesting. All right, I let you go for a while there because this is one of the important things when you're trying to figure out what's wrong with an idea. You ask yourself, is it practical to have another contest? Do we have the time, money, and resources? And the answer is actually yes. You can bring in more people, put them on the project. It doesn't cost anything really to have a contest anymore. And we do have the Zoom that we need. So if you were to argue against this idea and say it's not practical, you're on the losing side of the argument because there are certainly the time, money, and resources to get it done. So be careful about it if it's an idea that you disagree with, to be sure that you're disagreeing on the right part. So now we'll move on. Accurate. Is the information we have accurate? That there are 5 contest types? We only do 4? Yeah. The information we have so far is accurate. Very good. Now here's a question. Is it consistent for us to have 5 contests in a single year? And here the no's come a-flowing. You're absolutely right. This is not consistent. And remember, consistency is not just, have we done it in the past? Do we plan to do this off into the future forever? And the answer to that, we would be really throwing an anchor around district leadership for the foreseeable future if we introduce this new contest. One thing about contests, our members love contests. They can't get enough of them. So if you give them another and then you try and take that cookie away, that's going to make people furious. So consistency is a big red flag here. Is it a solution to a problem or does it provide a service? Yes, it does. Yeah, Priya, you're exactly right. It's a service. We would be providing an additional service to people, and people like contests. So that's not the one that I'm going to argue about. So, is it legal? Interesting question. By Toastmasters rules, are you allowed to have 5 contests in a year? So Allison says there's no rule. Yes, as long as it doesn't exceed 5% of the budget. Interesting. Here's the thing about this, and Ashvin, thank you very much. Not sure. That's a good, honest answer, and it's probably the best answer here. Why did we get rid of the fall conference? Now, in our district, we have the Fall Fusion, which is not a conference. No, Toastmasters International. We're not doing a conference. It's a Fall Fusion. It's just a happy little event. Well, there used to be a fall conference and a spring conference for many years. The problem with conferences is they take a lot of time and effort, and especially at the beginning of the year, our district leaders should be focused on starting new clubs, helping people achieve their education goals. They shouldn't be putting on big events and having these contests. Contests distract from our education goals, and that is why they actually did away with the fall conference at Toastmasters International, so that we could focus on things that are more pertinent to the educational mission of Toastmasters International. So the question is it legal? I think that the best answer as far as legality came from Jenny, where she said as long as it's not more than 5% of your budget. That's probably the technical answer. But does Toastmasters International smile on the idea of a fifth contest? And the answer is a big no. And we should really think about, if we wanted to have another contest, are we focusing on the educational mission of our club? The only person we should be in competition with is ourselves. I want to be a better speaker than I was last week. All right. That being said, yes, you can pick on me because I have won several of the contests, and I do love the contests. I enjoy doing it. But as an organization, that's something we have to really think about. So legal, yes, but not in the spirit of Toastmasters International. What would be that one? Are there alternatives to having speech contests? Carol says yes, 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 yes. Maybe, don't know. That's good. I'll tell you a great alternative to a speech contest. Abhijit Joshi, our program quality director, came up with a pitch your club contest just a couple of weeks ago. It's a speaking opportunity, but what is it doing? It's building club growth. So that was a great way to have a competition that involved speaking that was not a speech contest and is actually something that people can then put onto their website and use it to sell their club. Brilliant idea. Brilliant, I say. I am very proud of Avi for the great job that he's doing. So there are always alternatives to look for. And this is a good example of thesis, antithesis, synthesis. Thesis, we should have another contest. Antithesis, no, Toastmasters doesn't like them. Synthesis, well, let's have a contest that forwards our educational mission. That's the best possible outcome. Consequences, what are the consequences of having a fifth contest in there? Wow, I got two great answers right off the bat. Time consuming, yes. More variety. But Samantha, burnout. How many contests can we actually support on an ongoing basis and get enthusiastic about and have everybody show up and cheer on the trophy? That's a very good point. Diversion of resources, that's right. But Kunal, more opportunities. That's right. It would give, if we're going to have contests, it's great to have more participation and give people more opportunities to participate. All good ideas. So there are positive consequences to having additional speech contests, and there are negative consequences if we decide to do that. And we have to weigh all of those as we're deciding whether this is a good use of our time money, and resources. So let's just go back through pack Slack very quickly. So practical, yes, we do have time, money, and resources. That's true. Is our information accurate? Yes, it was. Is it consistent? No, no, and we really have to think about that. Is it a solution or a service? Yes, it provides a service. Is it legal? Shaky legal ground here. Are there alternatives? Yes, and very positive alternatives to it. Consequences? Consequences are sort of a wash. There are positives and negatives. So if I were going to go into a leadership meeting, say at the district executive committee, and I were going to talk about this, I wouldn't discuss the issues of practicality or accuracy. I would say, this is not consistent in terms of what we've done in the past or what we'd want to do in the future. It's flying in the face of what Toastmasters International is trying to achieve by reducing the number of contests. And it actually would prevent us from pursuing alternatives that are going to be better for the district. Slack. So you don't make spurious arguments. You only focus on the things that are of most concern to you, where you have the strongest case. And then when you argue this in front of whatever body, you're able to focus in on what is most important in the discussion, and it helps to keep you focused. All right. Great job, everybody. I appreciate your participation. That's the nice thing about doing a Toastmasters workshop. I know you're never going to hang me out to dry. All right, so at some point, you might get into a cycle where relationships and results are suffering. When that happens, you know it's time to hold a crucial conversation. Now, this book is absolutely a must-read for everybody who has to interact with human beings. There we go, crucial. And you can sort of see the conversations. There you are. Written by a team of 4 people who came together, and I'm sure there were plenty of conflicts as they were writing the book. It's just the best possible way to resolve issues that you can't resolve in any other fashion. You know it's time to have a crucial conversation when there are opposing opinions about high-stakes issues that result in strong emotions. Most of the time, what we do is just Toastmasters, right? It's easy to let things go. But sometimes someone might be behaving in a way that is interfering with other members' enjoyment and progress in the club, including your own. In that case, it's time to have a good conversation, a crucial conversation. Now, these high stakes might be your personal relationship or something related to the success of a project or success of your Toastmasters club. Now, here are the 7 principles of crucial conversations. You want to start with heart. You got to focus your ideas and know what you really want out of this interaction, what you want for yourself, what you want for the other person, and what you want for the organization as a whole. So think about your goals for yourself, for the person, and your club, if it's a Toastmasters issue. The next thing is you need to learn to look at the person that you're talking to and recognize when the interaction is not going well, when the person you're talking to is feeling unsafe. When you find that's the case, you need to make it safe for them. Create a safe environment and a mental space where you can both express yourselves freely. As I said when I talked to my coworker at Oracle, we went to another floor. We went to an empty office, and it was not his space, it wasn't my space, completely neutral space to make it safe to express ourselves and not worry about being overheard by people who are walking by. As you start to talk, you need to master your own stories. There are certain stories that we have a tendency to tell about ourselves, victim stories, villain stories, or helpless stories. So if you find yourself telling a story where you're the victim, everybody's against me, well, think about what are you hiding from yourself? If you're telling a villain story, Frank is evil, then ask why a reasonable, rational, decent person would behave that way. And if you're telling a helpless story, oh, there's no solution to this problem, but ask yourself what you can change about yourself right now that would help you to move toward what you really want. Now, once you've focused yourself in, you're going to state your path. And state is an acronym here. S is for share your facts. Tell your story, ask for other people's opinions, talk tentatively. So you're going to own your own story. You're not going to talk in any absolutes. You're just going to throw things out as ideas. And you're going to encourage testing so that as you're throwing it out, you see how well it's being received. Then you're going to explore each other's paths. Be a good listener, amp it up, ask questions. All right. So you're going to, there we go. Again, ask questions as you're going. Test to see whether or not they understand what you're saying. Mirror is using that reflective listening. So when they say something, you can clarify it with them by repeating it in your own words. That's the best way to know that you're both on the same wavelength. You can paraphrase, and you can prime them. You can ask questions trying to draw out of them exactly what it is, trying for clarity, trying for getting them to talk if they seem to be clamming up. And the last thing you do is you set up an action plan. You write down a set of steps for what you're going to do together to move forward. Who is going to do what, when they're going to get it done, and what are you going to do to follow up on whether or not things are succeeding. You get all of those elements together, you've got a great, crucial conversation. All right. Now, the goal is to have a safe conversation and find some common ground. When the conversation is not going well, your amygdala gets involved. You probably heard of this. This is the lizard brain at the back. When people get anxious, it results in a fight or fight response. Now, some people will respond with silence. That's flight, in effect. Some people will respond with violence in that case. That's where they get aggressive. They might get loud, shout at you, confrontation, and personal attacks. Whenever somebody is clamming up and going into silence or acting out and going into violence, the best trick, and this is probably the one thing you should take away from this presentation today, when someone is behaving that way, ask them a question. It doesn't matter what the question is. The amygdala back here, the lizard brain, can't handle questions. The only part of your brain that can process a question is the prefrontal cortex, right up here. The minute you ask somebody a question, they have to start thinking about it. You can ask them, why is the sky blue? And they're about to punch you, but they have to pause. They can't go forward with the punch until their brain figures out what the question is. They don't even have to answer the question. They may think the question is stupid. It might make them angrier, who knows? But because their brain is answering the question, it takes them out of fight or flight mode. And this is why asking probing questions, safe questions that keep people feeling comfortable exposing what it is that they're trying to keep hidden, is going to be the most effective way of continuing the communication, bringing people into that area of safety, finding the pool of shared meaning, which just means the areas that you can agree upon to get together. Then you can sit down, write out your action plan for what you're going to do in order to work together in the future. And pulling it together this way, you will resolve many of the most crucial conflicts that you run into in your life. All right, now I left plenty of time for questions and answers. And as I said at the beginning, I know that many of you have got conflicts right now in your clubs and in your life that we can talk about and see what we can do to give you some tools that you can use when you go back into the real world. So, Becky, have you captured any interesting questions in the chat along the way?
Unfortunately, I got kicked out and I lost my chat questions.
Oh,
initially.
okay.
So I'm really sorry. I'm kind of hoping to get some support. I don't know, Derek, if you have from the beginning the questions. I have no way to get them when I was
No,
kicked out.
no worries.
So,
We've got some great questions coming in
yeah.
right now. So, and please do go ahead and post your questions as we go. And I'll take some verbal and some written, but I'm impressed with anybody who types for an audience. So I'm going to give you some love here.
Dennis,
What is
Rebecca has her hand up.
Yes, thank you. What is the best method of asking a question in that instance? So Rebecca, what instance were you referring to?
Well, it's the one where you know somebody's, the back part of their brain has been activated and they have something to say. They're just not able to say it and you want to draw it out. Maybe they're feeling intimidated by me, for example. And so
Yeah.
what would be the best way for me to ask a question so that they don't feel further pressed into the back of their brain, to get them to actually, feel safe enough to answer?
One thing that typically works well is to be sure that you're only talking about your own behavior and talking about your own ideas and not attacking anything, or that could be perceived as an attack on what they're saying. So you can ask, am I being clear? What do you think about that? How would you improve that idea? And so take it back on yourself, any sort of negative connotation, to give them something to build from and make them feel safe. Admit that you're not perfect in some way, and ask them to talk about things where they may not be perfect in their way as well.
Okay,
But
thank you.
it needs to feel safe to share. And generally, as you know, when other people are sharing with you, you're more likely to be willing to share with them. But
Yeah.
if it,
So
you
I
just
just
don't
wonder.
want it to turn into an interrogation.
Yeah, right. That's what I was afraid of. So I'm wondering, like verbiage, like I'm wondering, I'm curious, I'm hoping maybe you would feel safe in sharing your idea. Just like some verbiage to help start the sentence.
Yeah, those are all great.
Okay.
Am I being clear? Does that make sense to you? How have you addressed this in the past? Is there anybody you would point to who you think is doing a better job at this than I am doing?
That's great.
These are all great ways to deflect off of them onto you, and even then deflect off of you and get it more universally discussed. Yeah. So I think you've got great instincts for that, Rebecca. And I know that a lot of times when you're going to have a conversation with somebody, because there's going to be this confrontation, you can't avoid it. A lot of times you'll be mulling this in bed, right? As you're trying to go to sleep, first thing when you wake up, and you can practice these kinds of lines. And this is, again, where we get to owning your story. So if you're telling a victim story, figure out why you're telling it in such a way that you feel that you've been oppressed. Figure out how you can talk about it instead about the situation. And this is, it gets back to Deborah Tannen's book, Men and Women in Conversation You Just Don't Understand. There it is. Men talk about situations. Women tend to talk about relationships. Okay, now, is this nature or nurture? I don't. This is based on Deborah Tannen's research. That is what she found. And the problem with men and women as they talk is that very often men will be talking about a situation, and it comes off to a woman as if they're being personally attacked. Whereas women will talk about their feelings, and men will try to fix the situation and try and jump in and mansplain things, or they will try to fix something when the woman is just expressing her feelings about something. And that's all she wants, is to be heard about that particular thing. So you want to be certain that you're thinking about the other person's point of view, tell your stories in such a way that it's going to be understood by this other person, comfortable for that person. And don't tell villain stories about the person you're talking with. Don't tell victim stories about yourself, and don't tell helpless stories where nobody's going to be able to solve the situation. Okay, thanks, Rebecca. That was a great stimulus there. Elaine, you had your hand up first.
Yes, thank you so much, Dennis. Great presentation. So Dennis, I have many years in Toastmasters. I joined it's not a corporate club. It's some kind of other club that is a special club that they have mentors over the club. So anyway, the club president has told me, you're moving too fast. I'm a fast mover, you know, I'm a project manager, so I plan everything, we just move fast. That's what we do. And she says, oh, slow down, slow down. So one of the strategies you said is don't like walk off and say, I'm not going to play with you anymore. I'm not going to be part of the party. But so what I did was exactly that. And she's much happier. I've just pulled back, I just dropped the plates on the floor, let it drop, and I stood back to the wall and let them move at their pace, and they're all happy. So
yeah, okay, they're all happy, Elaine, but who isn't happy?
That's okay.
No. Elaine, you tell me who isn't happy in that exchange.
I'll go to an advanced club.
No, Elaine, my dear, my love, we are all here, and we're hearing you say you're not happy with that situation.
What did Spock say? The needs of the needs of the many
right.
is more than for the one, or whatever, you know.
Oh my goodness! But in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king, Elaine. And if you're in a club that I was in a club, everybody was perfectly happy spending our club dues on margarita parties. Okay. That is against Toastmasters rules. It is against the educational mission of the club. Everybody was happy with it. I wasn't. I left the club. Yes, I understand that situation. But what you're talking about is, I see some real areas for improvement of the club. She didn't say those are terrible ideas. She said you're moving too fast with your ideas. So there's a great solution. That is to pull out your club success plan. Do you have a club success plan?
They're just getting started. They're totally brand new. Totally.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, that's why, hey, we're brand new. We got to pull out our club success plan. And in the club success plan, you look at what you're going to do on a month-by-month basis, who's going to earn their educational awards, when you're going to have your open house, and you plan these things out. And so you don't have to do them all now. You're not rushing ahead. In fact, you're sitting back and you're planning it, and you're thinking about how you're going to achieve all of these goals over the course of the year. Then it's just a policy matter, isn't it? You're not talking about opinions, and you've got all your facts lined up. You just pull this thing out once a month and you take a look at it. So I would encourage you to go back and say, hey, I just went to TLI. I learned some great things. One thing Dennis talked about was the club success plan. Can we put one of those together to be sure that we're moving forward? And then use the plan as the guide for your discussion.
Right.
And that way you don't have to have a conflict between yourselves. You can get mad at the club success plan, but go ahead and do it anyway.
Thank you so much, Dennis. Thank you.
Jenny, your question.
In certain cultures, asking a question can be a challenge, and also for neurodivergent professionals where they miss social cues. How do you advise them to ask a safe question?
How do you advise them to ask a safe question, as opposed to how do you interact with them?
Well, the problem is, for example, people from different cultures or who may be neurodivergent, they will ask questions, but the minute it's an unsafe question, it sets people off on hey, this is a threatening question, you're challenging my authority, or this is a question that's not receptive, and they may not know that. So how do you advise them to learn how to ask more safe questions?
That is a good question. You have to be aware of your audience. And that's why in the Crucial Conversations, it says learn to look. So if you're dealing with someone who is particularly sensitive, then you have to up your spidey senses to be sensitive to their sensitivity. And that means that you'll probably want to take this person aside, or if they're getting anxious in the current situation, you want to be sure that you have an opportunity to talk with them in a safe space. Okay, so ask them what would be a good time to talk about this. What would be a good place? Would you be more comfortable talking at your home? Would you be more comfortable talking at Starbucks where there are witnesses in case I pull a knife? Figure out what it is that's making them feel unsafe, and do what you can to make them feel safe in that situation. But you're absolutely right. You don't want to push a conversation on somebody. No, this is good for you. I'm helping you by trying to. I read this book. It's great. Yeah, nothing like that. You want to be sensitive to what makes them comfortable and willing to talk to you. Yeah, I think just the thought, I'm going to make sure that someone else is comfortable, is going to enable you to make that happen in the most effective way. All right. And Rochelle.
Thank you, Dennis. I know we've been focusing a lot on the silence, so people that pretty much close up and don't talk. How about the people that become extremely aggressive, very verbal, to the point where you and the whole team starts feeling a little bit unsafe? How do you deflect that kind of behavior, or how do you bring everything back to a neutral situation?
One of my most embarrassing moments was when I was about, I don't know, 20 years old. I was visiting a friend that we were about to watch the first episode of the original Battlestar Galactica. And it was really exciting for us. It was the Star Wars time, and, you know, oh boy, this is going to be great. And I was getting very ebullient in the anticipation of this great show that was about to come on. As a result, I was being very loud, and my friend's father got up and left the room. Just stood up and walked out. He didn't say a word. He didn't get mad at me. I was just being too loud for him. And as a result, I was immediately chagrined. And this is what I recommend if you've got a situation where someone is being verbally abusive, and you don't have, you can try, again, asking a question, saying, right now, this is feeling uncomfortable for me. Is there some way we can talk about this later? Is there some way that we can reduce the tension? I ask you a question. If that doesn't happen, walk out and resume the conversation later. You do not have to stand there and take people's abuse. And if you talk about other members in your club and you all decide, yes, that's the tack you want to take, it can absolutely fracture a precedent if you stand up and all walk out at the same time without getting angry, without causing a disturbance, but just removing yourself from that uncomfortable situation, and then coming back and re-engaging when everything is calmed down. So yeah, don't keep yourself in an uncomfortable situation. Oh, we got one more minute. Allison, I'm going to skip to Kieran this time.
Oh, actually, Dennis, breakout rooms will close in 112 seconds. They're going to just close the breakout room.
Oh, great.
Wow.
Okay.
So we've
we
got to
can just
wrap it. I'm sorry, folks. Let me go ahead and let's thank Dennis for a wonderful presentation. I love pack slack. So that's going to be what I'm going to be walking around and thinking about a lot today. And so many other tips that Dennis shared with us. Tech Chair, would you please stop the recording? And